ultimately it's the intent of the person who is using that technology to really, address the challenges that DNI have. So, Sachin, completely right. DNI have to help not just AI, DNI have to help each other also beyond the AI world. So, completely on it. Because you work on AGI, right? So, please make sure our emotions are addressed in your AGI systems.
And
Absolutely.
Mahua, since you talked about Indra Nui, so the recently she happened to address all of us. She was in our office, and
Oh,
and and I,
wow.
and I know,
What a
I mean,
fantastic
she's
opportunity.
such a big kind of ambassador for women and especially for India, right? And for her, diversity is something very close to her heart, right? And since I heard Geeta and Sachin, just one point from my side, it's like a two things. No, one, we all need to have the commitment towards that one, diversity, bringing diversity to AI, right? And second, we all need to have patience, right? But we as a human being, like we couldn't eliminate, we just wish that unconscious bias won't exist at all. Okay, and that's where like we need to also have some sort of patience with AI. You need to feed it with the right sort of data continuously.
So here I would like
Absolutely.
to quote, I would like to talk about something. So once in my daughter's
Yeah.
school, Shabana Azmi had come over, right? So she
Oh,
talked
nice.
about how, so she gave a very pertinent point about education. She says, when we teach about who is this? This is mother. And this is dad. And they show the dad going to office and working, and they show the mother cooking, right? So she said that, why are we teaching these things to
That's
children?
bias.
Right. And
It
similarly, if
is
you see
very young.
yeah. And if you look at the advertisements also today, earlier the mother used to be wearing a bun and a bindi and a sari, and all the washing clothes and everything was hers. But today, I'm pleased to see ads where the guys are the ones putting it in the using the washing machine, or I mean, it shows a more equitable world where the mother
It
is saying,
does.
"I'm going to be
Yeah.
late to work, late coming home," and the dad says, "Okay, I'll cook today." So I think a lot of this shift is necessary in society, and all the messages that are going to the world. It's not just at a grassroots level. A lot of changes are needed in order to
Yep.
ensure that the mindsets change. Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic point. And, I think at some point of time when my daughter was in first grade, her teacher asked, I think everybody, what does your mother cook? And my daughter put up her hand and she says, Miss, my mother doesn't know how to cook. My father cooks. So she came back and she told me, do you know all the other mothers cook and you're the only mom who doesn't know how to cook in my class? And I'm like, wow, okay, I'm sorry. But you're so right, right? My husband is a far better cook than I will ever hope to be. Okay, so I think taking a step back, right? So if you were to look at recruitment, Dilip, I think you have had some work, you've done some work with marginalized communities. So how have you looked at AI opening up opportunities for those who are typically overlooked, maybe because they're perhaps visibly differently abled? I think all of us are differently abled in different senses, but perhaps how do you think AI is going to help us with at least those who are visibly differently able? Do you think AI can help eliminate a bit of bias there, or what are your thoughts?
So Namita, like first of I belong to kind of the same community. I myself is person with the disability, and I like to talk, like to promote, about the equitable culture and what exactly how to deal with that, right? And I
Yes,
truly
please.
believe, I truly believe that people
Mm.
have the right intent. It's just
Yeah,
about, people don't know how exactly to action it. Okay. And
absolutely.
also when you talked about like marginalized community, we need to understand the background. You know, uh, I mean, why like certain set of community are overlooked? Is it by design, right, or by
Mhm.
default? So honestly, any business or anything in the world, right, first thing they look for survival, right? And for survival,
Mm.
any company, even organization, they will look to make profit out of it, right?
You're right.
And
Yeah.
in general, the world is shaped by the people who are living a normal life, right? And often those people they have not kind of faced any diverse challenge as such. Not only by possible disability, but even for LGBTQ for that matter, right? For the
Yes.
different
Yeah.
set of
Yeah.
diversity, right? So they have not been represented, and that's why probably the world is not looking very similar, right? And the
Yeah.
way like Geeta talked about Sabana Azmi, like the example she gave, right? That's also not by design, right? Because that's how people associate. That's what you have seen in the at home, right? Maybe at different places, and that's what's happening, right? And I believe with intervention of AI, that's where we have very unique opportunity, right, to make the impactful change
Yeah.
with the help of the AI, right? And you talked about kind of person with disability, so the way I will not limit here, but to kind of to all walk of life, all sort of marginalized community, right? A very very simple thing, right? Do you think that all sort of people would have access to the education platform today? Or people on wheelchair, can they really go to the normal schools? People who are really kind of deaf and dumb, okay, can they really understand the teachers? Are the teachers equipped? Are all the school equipped, right? But today what we have with this online platforms or AI driven education platforms, right, that's accessible to everybody now, irrespective of kind of what background they have. It's not that costly also. Second, the speech recognition, right, or even text to speech as such, right? Those
Yes.
all things are helping kind of those people, who are from the marginalized community, right? When I talked about the hiring, I talked about like having gender neutral JD, right? But any kind of JD, it also detect the bias, right? Now most company, more of the company, like they are looking to have the inclusive workplace, right? So it's also helping them promoting their job, but they organize much better to those people, helping them in the right way, right? Also ensuring that there's job match which are more inclusive as such, right? Maybe how exactly diverse set of candidate can be hired in the organization, right? It's also helping hiring manager and the panelist in like so we do it kind of interview skill training, right? And unconscious bias is kind of the big thing, right? And we have a lot of AI driven kind of a solution learning platform, right? So which is helping organization to understand how exactly to hire fairly, and also not only organization hiring but also treating individually in the organization, right, with a fair. So yeah, I'm missing the name. It's a Pride Circle, I believe, right? So Pride Circle, yeah,
They
they
do
did
a lot of good
a
work.
wonderful uh, education system, right? During the Pride month, and we are like one of the silver kind of medalists there, right? And we're like be for the ally, right? We all like we promote all the employee to go through those sort of training, right? And the way it has been personalized, this is wonderful, right? So I certainly believe, with AI we have big opportunities already helping, but the way I said earlier, we need to have some sort of patience. Okay, need to invest more and more as an organization. Okay, and same goes with developers also, right? Developers or any kind of organization which is into developing AI, right? Don't look for the quick wins. If you really need to sustain, your organization need to have DI element. Otherwise, like you can't kind of go for a long kind of a walk. It's just kind of a short win you're looking for.
Absolutely. I love it. AI in it for the win, AI in it for the long term. All right. Yes, Sachin, you were going to say
Can I just
something.
add one sentence to that, Navita?
Please, you should.
It's a very pertinent point that Dilip has raised when he spoke about accessibility, which is where
Yes.
any organization, before you even venture into DEI, you have to first put in place accessibility, right?
I
And
agree. Yeah.
so before you hire, let's say, diverse candidates, right? People, let's say, who are blind, or he mentioned about deaf and dumb, etc., right? So do you have the right kind of, are you removing the physical and digital barriers for them to be able to actually, bring their best in the jobs? If you can't do that, then there is the DI is no use at all, right? Right kind of accessibility, and which is where I believe that AI could be put into use at this point in time. Visually impaired, or motor disability, or let's say hearing disability, people who have got a language accessibility issues, etc. AI to be put into use so as to make it equal, for everyone, equal opportunity. Thank you.
And such an if I just add there, the two things which is typically hindrance any organization about that. One, any organization, they believe, one, they're afraid about the compliance, are they kind of, is it too complex to, hire people with marginalized community, what the compliance challenge would be. And second one, we all are afraid about, organization readiness, be it infrastructure, right? Be it kind of our employer, are they really mature enough to, give the inclusive culture, right? So that's where probably, AI, you all kind of as an organization, right, can think that you're coming up with a solution which is helping organization in these two aspects as such.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's such a great point, Dilip and Sachin, because I remember way back in about 2011, 2012, around that time, I was heading diversity for Deutsche Bank, and we hired about 20 folks who are differently abled. And, we really made adjustments to the JDs in terms of, and it took us a lot of time. It took us almost a year to get the right roles, because if somebody was visually impaired, we had to tweak the JD so that it'll be more voice for him. right? So something that took us so long, if we had AI those days, I really think it would have been so much simpler in terms of just getting the roles ready for them, being able to onboard them smoothly. And once they did a fantastic job. We had such fabulous feedback because they said, you know what, they're not distracted, you know, there are no extended long coffee breaks, all of that. So it was a great feedback. But you're right, you know, that preparation took us a while because we didn't know how to do it, right? So I think, you know, just having that AI as that, you know, added spark would have been so helpful. So thank you for sharing that, Dilip. You know, so while we are on this topic, right, I think perhaps we'll just explore it a little bit more, right? Geeta, I'm going to come to you, right, to understand how do we kind of maybe have AI bridge communication gaps and open up opportunities for other individuals also who might be overlooked, right? I think apart from what we have discussed, I think, you know, there might be some more thoughts that I believe you had on this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing this point, Namita, because I work in the space of a GCC, which is a Global Collaboration Center. These are all centers which work for companies headquartered in the United States, Europe, and wherever. And the biggest challenge here is that, or any company which is where the clients are internationally. Typically, what happens is only your best English-speaking crowd gets to be client-facing or front-facing, right? And the people who really understand the technology, who need to be on the conversation, sometimes do not get to be there, or there is a huge barrier because of the language, right? So one thing that AI, which is very, very interesting, and even there has been a lot of research also that has gone into saying that people with accents or people with, dialects, so there was a big thing about mother tongue influence, when we hire candidates, oh, she has a strong MTI, and I never understood the fuss about it. I said that because I worked for an organization which had team members, you work with teams in Europe, in the Far East, and everybody spoke English in different accents. And we never saw it as a barrier. I never understood the fuss about MTI, and why should it bother anyone if what accent the person speaks in, right? But that is true. And today, when we look at the corporate jobs, more and more jobs are becoming very cut and dried. Like you don't no longer need to be an engineer to do many of the jobs that are taking place in the tech companies, right? So we can easily hire people from villages or from other communities who really need that break, who need that job. But what really stands as a roadblock is the language, the English language, right? So Panasonic Connect, right? It's an organization which has implemented DeepL, right? Which is a technology they've used where people speak real time. So it's a Japanese company, and they work on the area of research and B2B, right? So they use a lot of platforms which real time, the DeepL translates real time, and it understands the language nuances as well. So whether it's humor or all of that, so there's seamless conversation between the two globally, diverse countries. Or more so, people are able to read research papers written in a different language. Because in order to do the innovation, you need to be able to access the research material, and you're not able to understand it. So there are translators and interpreters, that interpretation and translation that DeepL does, which is so seamless. So I see such a benefit for our country like us if we implement an AI tool like this, which will enable us to speak to anyone, and we understand perspectives, and really to make the world as small a place as possible. I think there is a lot of merit in that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Right. I want to shift the topic a little bit, right? And we've talked about biases, both positive, negative. We've spoken about that for a bit. And Sachin, this one's for you, right? So I think, as we research and as I talk to a lot of AI scientists and as I read up, I hear that fairness and accuracy are often competing priorities when it comes to AI, right? Sometimes, like we said, Geeta, you spoke about the fact that, the data that we feed to AI should be bias-free, but, the real life is not bias-free, right? So how do you see this competition going? And do you think, it's possible to achieve, both fairness and accuracy? And two, if not, what trade-offs, Sachin, do you think we should be aware of?
That's a great question, Navita. Before I answer that, Navita, can I just wanted to add to something which Geeta mentioned, which is like
Please do. Please go ahead. Yeah.
great perspective that she shared, and beyond, I mean, Geeta mentioned about the language side itself, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it goes so much beyond languages. If you actually see, we humans, and now we're making the AI systems also follow that, is when you monitor an interview candidate, and a candidate expressing two people, one from a very let's say very culturally advantaged background and one from a very disadvantaged background, the way they respond, to a question, the whole mannerisms might be different, but they get judged when they respond. This is called a neurotypical bias. And neurotypical bias,
Wow. Yeah.
which we all humans have, it is very conscious in us, I mean, we're not even talking about the subconscious or the unconscious mind. So imagine an AI system doing that. We need to really get rid of that, going so much beyond languages as well. But that's a great thought, Geeta, which you mentioned. Namita, quickly coming to your point, now, I would not want to, compromise on the accuracy at all. At the same time, I would want to be fair. I would want to have fairness baked in to the hilt in my AI systems. I've been a big component of fairness, And how do we achieve that? We have to have a totally different perspective to all of this. When I quoted Socrates, that is something which I so passionately believe in, and we all need to really, imbibe that into our systems. Is that, see, when we talk about, accuracy, okay, are we actually, typically when we come from a very conventional mindset, a traditional mindset, we are trying to, actually acquire the same kind of, metrics and the success markers, which are actually ridden by our human conscious bias. For instance, I'll just give you a simple example over here. When you are, let's say, screening a candidate profile or judging a candidate, we typically go through what? Number of years of experience, their past promotions, and what is the kind of university knowledge acquired, etc. Why do we not look into what is the kind of innovation that they have brought in, right? If instead of the number of years of experience, what is the knowledge that has been accrued over a period of time? How many people have they mentored? Instead of coding tests, we administer them coding tests, right? Problem solving approaches, how many different approaches have they come through? They may not be able to solve a problem, but have they been able to at least suggest different approaches to it? So there is the moment we change the perspective, Namita, we will be able to address both fairness and the accuracy. So how now? Let me talk a little bit technical, because your question was, so that
it is a fairly technical question. Yeah.
Straight to the point. How do you and where do you start? You start with a very data-driven solution kind of a framework. No? When you have a framework ready, obviously data plays a very important role in it. So when you are using a training data set for your AI, you have to have a very inclusive training data set. Now, how do you prepare a inclusive training data set? So when you are actually gathering data, you have to go in for a diversification of sources. So do not restrict to whatever traditional data sources that you have. Now, this is easier said than done. It is incredibly difficult to acquire data from a diverse set of sources, which is AI is going to face a huge challenge, which is where I keep saying that the humans who are trying to build it, it is imperative on them to be able to gather as much of data from as many diverse sources as possible. That is one. Now, second thing is, at the same time, when we are talking about diversity, data, see, our hands are tied these days with respect to GDPR, data privacy, data regulations, etc. There's only so much data that you can get your hands on. At the same time, see, we have a wish list that our AI needs to be completely non-biased. But at the same time, we are not even able to feed it the right kind of data, which is where, generative AI comes to the rescue. And we are so glad I'm so glad that we are living in this era, that if you do not have your hands on the traditional data set, the ones that you really require, use generative AI to create synthetic data set, which is what, we kind of, not just me and my team, a lot of other teams, they are dabbling with. You can use AI to create a synthetic data. Now, that is also easier said than done. You need to be able to control the AI, giving it all the diverse, data sets, saying that, hey, this is the kind of data set that I want. So this is about the source diversification, in terms of data. Now,
so introduce more synthetic chat
Exactly.
GPT generated for simple.
Exactly. But then, Navita, here's a catch over there. You're asking AI to create data, but you need to have the right kind of people generate the data for you. You need to be able to, for instance, I have this much, that I need to have, let's say, 100 different parameters to address so many different underrepresented groups. So I have to curate my data in that fashion. Once the AI generates the data to you, there has to be a human in the loop. Somebody needs to validate it. You cannot just,
Yeah,
let it
yeah.
go to the AI. Now, that said, there's another thing. Once you have these diverse data sources, you need to enrich your data. Now, how do you typically enrich your data? So let's talk about a few parameters. Let's say demographics, let's say about the career paths, or let's say about success marks or the skill resources, skill sources, etc. So typically, let's say in a traditional way, we were targeting, let's say 2 to 3 demographic groups. This time, target more than 20 demographic groups. This is how you diversify, expand your interests. Very
Nice.
difficult to do, but you can do it with the aid of, a generative AI. Now, that said, see, again, so, I mean, we are not trying to build something very perfect. And I always, I also always believe in the fact that, I think Dilip said, start small, obviously start small. And every time, keep on having a human in the loop and keep on going back to validate your results. Keep on monitoring it. A better AI system is always built like that. Are you having the right kind of data audits in place? Are you identifying the gaps? Are you actually doing mapping the blind spots? Are you actually measuring the representation of each of the groups or not? Enhancements, etc. And then you need to have a validation checkpoint. So this is like, I tried to put it in a capsule, Namita, but so many, and it is a very exhaustive set of exercises, has to be done in a very meticulous manner, has to be continuously, stakeholders have to be represented, they have to be informed about it. It has to be a closed loop always. You need to do that. And while you do that, pick the right kind of diverse people to do it. That's the only way that that's it.
Thank you. I think that sounds like a very positive recipe. So let's see, fingers crossed. Mahua, you spoke a fair bit about, how AI is really for boosting performance, boosting productivity, right, Mahua? Now, for anybody who thinks that humans don't have biases, right? This question, please perk up your ears, because let me assure you that all of us have biases. There's this fantastic tool called IAT. It's implicit association test. It's by Harvard. If you look up IAT Harvard, you'll find the implicit association test. I thought I was very, very, bias free, and, I'm so pro women and all. I went there, tried the test, and, what have you, apparently I am as biased as just about anybody else, even when it comes to women leaders, right? So Mahua, coming back to our question, so while we're looking at AI as a neutral force for boosting productivity, there are a lot of biases in recruitment, in performance evaluation that are deeply personal, right? So how do you think AI could act as a neutral force while performing its core job of boosting productivity?
So I think that, a large part of AI today is not really governed by laws or legislation.
Yes.
Policies. And it is very difficult. I mean, you couldn't govern the internet, and internet is so many years old, and we're just starting off with AI. So there is very little actually that you can do in order to really ensure that all of this is addressed. So, but we are getting there. For example, in India, we don't really have, AI related policies, but some AI related policies in the Europe region, and some in the lawmakers of America are very, very vociferous about these kind of policies. I think that makes, I'm really hoping that those kind of frameworks will help address some of the challenges that you're talking about. So that's my view. Otherwise, it's very technology driven, right? Like Sachin is focused only on accuracy, right? So, and
what?
I mean,
Sachin is focused on accuracy.
as a technologist, he's doing the right thing. Okay, now as a woman, sometimes I might say, okay, your synthetic data has to be, little more biased towards women. So make it a little more biased towards women, so that automatically the output forces you to think towards women, even if you don't want to, as a user of those AI systems. So it's these systems, how do you use them? It's you and I. I mean, you say you have your biases, I have bigger biases. We are the ones who are using these AI systems. I think one big challenge which is not addressed today is the feedback model. So typically AI systems, I mean, chatbots also, I personally get very frustrated because when chatbots cannot answer my questions, they don't even give you an option of, okay, how can we do better, or
Yeah.
where did we
Yeah.
fail? And here I'm connecting you. They don't give you that option so easily. And they definitely
Indeed.
don't take our feedback. So the moment we really establish it as a policy, that all AI systems should have a very strong 360-degree feedback loop of taking in inputs from the users themselves, then I think a lot of these challenges can be addressed. And that it has started actually, but it's not like very, of course, the technology is also very new. So I think we'll get there.
Yeah. The technology is new, but here's hoping we'll get there in some time. Sachin, back to you, and then I'm going to open it up to the panel. But Sachin, Mahua spoke about the lack of regulation. I know EU has guidelines. India has little to, not so much guidelines. So how do you think organizations can lead with self-regulation, and what practices do you see them adopting so that, they kind of ensure fairness?
That's a great question, Namita. And that's a great point. If you look at it, because I think Mahua mentioned about US, right? US, last I checked, there are almost 400 bills which are open right now at various stages
Wow.
across different states of United States of America.
Mhm.
And typically, one of those bills, which is I was very vociferous against, like opposing one of the bills, So presently, I mean, if you actually look at it, I'm pro bill. But then SB 1047, which was there in the California Senate, which actually got passed also. It got presented to the governor for the final signing. And had it been signed, it would have put a stop to so much of innovation which is happening at this point in time. I mean, I will not reveal all the content of it because that's a long way to go. But then thankfully, the governor, good sense prevailed, and, the governor took it under suggestion, has not signed it. But then again, there are a lot of other bills which are required to be, passed. That said, Namita, yes, India has been, if you actually look at it, totally governed. I mean, there are actually efforts which are happening up, sprucing up. There are a lot of private initiatives which have started. I might not be able to make you privy to a few of those initiatives. Which
Yeah.
But at the same time, the good thing about India is that, we've got so much of talent here, Namita. So many people, so many different corporates. We are actually making so much of contribution to the field of AI. Obviously, if you compare it with the French or with any other country, you may say that, hey, we have still not been able to, really, really contribute in terms of, generative AI LLMs out there, but we are making a whole lot of difference. But then, especially until something happens, at a governance level, at a pro country level, what needs to happen is, from entire organizations, these small and tiny steps that are taken, in terms of how they build the AI is very, very important. I think Mahua mentioned about a feedback loop. Absolutely. And that feedback loop is not only from the consumer standpoint, for instance, for ChatGPT or all, it's typically at this point in time, it's available. You can give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And, I actually, I always recommend people to do that, no matter what kind of generative AI you're using. So you may end up asking 100 questions, but to every answer, give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. That's the only way you will make it like, learn, which is what we do with our system as well. But more importantly, at an organization level, how much of data audits are you doing? Now, how frequent is your when I say feedback loop, your validation loop in terms of the right kind of data is being done, the right of kind of testing is being done, etc., and the right kind of success markers are being incorporated into the system or not. That is absolutely imperative. And how did you fetch all that data? Despite all the privacy and regulations, have you been able to fetch the data through using the right kind of source? If not, are you using synthetic data to do that or not? So yes, there's a whole lot of effort that needs to happen, Namita. Two things is what, see, again, from a governance aspect, when you're actually making an AI system, for instance, like an LLM system or something, which will be used by consumers, I'm not talking about a B2B system or B2C system. You have to be extremely careful about that. That is where regulation needs to come in. But when you're actually doing it, let's say, for instance, in a B2B setup, that is where it can be tightly controlled by the enterprise itself and the vendors. But a lot of development needs to happen there. Namita. I could go into the possible details, but then I think I'll spare you all the. But then, yeah, a whole lot of things need to happen, Namita. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Thank you so much. So I think we're hoping that, that kind of covers a little bit about the positive bias, Mahua, that you had also spoken about a bit. Would you like to expand a little bit, perhaps, Mahua, and if anybody else wants to join after that? I was very fascinated by the term that you had shared some time back, about positive bias in AI.
Yeah, I mean, Sachin talked about B2B, B2C, and all of those business models. I talk about H to H, which is human to human. So
Lovely.
it is about humans interacting with each other, supported by AI. So the day we understand that, and we are not completely dependent on technology to guide us and make us lead our lives and probably even govern us, I think that'll be a win, because one of the biggest arguments today is, will AI take over our world? Will AI take over our jobs? I think one of the questions which came in onto the chat also is also asking, prompt engineering, is that a, great place to really look at?
Yeah.
Very, very interesting that when I started, I had forgotten coding because I was not, into coding for a long period of time. But I wanted to build a system. And I wanted to build an AI system. I used generative AI to create the code. So, I mean, you can use generative AI to build a generative AI system. Now, the world is actually becoming that intelligent, and the day AGI and all comes in, sentiments, emotions, all of it will get into AI. And imagine that world. That world will be something which is so mechanical that ultimately it is that H to H and the return to office policies, etc., coffee breaks, all of that will really have the real value than the technology.
True. I mean, absolutely, because it is a human touch that we will very soon start craving, right? Look at us all in our different rooms. A few years ago, we would not even have conceived that we will be, in a room across wherever India with 75 participants logging in and listening. So absolutely agree. All right. So I think we've done a fair bit of challenges, covered a little bit of the regulations, right? Let's look at solutioning a little bit, right? So I think, we've covered the whole thing about data sets, synthetic data sets, done, I think, a really good thing. I want to think about what are your thoughts, everybody, on how do we look at perhaps the beginning, right? How do you integrate DEI from the grassroots level, right? If anybody would like to share, I'm going to open this up a little bit.
So I think, STEM initiatives these days are really, in, and that is one of the DNI initiatives also, right? But nowadays they talk not about STEM, they talk about STEAM, which is STEAM. A is the arts part of it, right? And it is now with the AI systems and all, it is also, very much acknowledged and appreciated if you apply your creativity to your work. And that is going to be a differentiator. And that is also leveler, because why did we really look at STEM education? It was because to help encourage girls to get into, technical fields, but it's also to encourage boys to get into creative fields. So
how lovely. How lovely. Just love that thought. Thank you.
I mean, start at the grassroots, start with the kids, and get involved in STEM and STEAM education.
Beautiful. Geeta, anything you'd like to add to that? It's such a beautiful point. I thought I'd love to hear from you.
So I think like going from what I shared earlier about our school books or whatever, and every role we play, whether as parents or aunts, uncles, or whatever we play, whenever we touch a child or life in some way, or we are educators, we teach, or voluntarily, whatever we do, I think it's extremely important to, if you are a witness to something which you feel is discriminating or differentiating, that is very important. But most importantly, it is I think schools, the news, that is the media, right? They
Yeah.
play a huge role
Oh,
in
absolutely. Yeah.
influencing today,
True.
influencing people. Now, while we would love the human to human interaction, physical interaction, we do know that when we do physical, people cannot meet. I mean, there are people in different countries, and today, because of technology, we are able to see each other. We are getting opinions across, diverse opinions.
Yeah.
But there is also patterns of messaging or influencing taking place, right? Whether it's social media or television or your OTT and everywhere, movies and schools. So I think a lot of regulations need to come in terms of some bit of steering people towards the right mindset is extremely important, because AI is one side of the story, but how do we change mindsets? Because AI
Yeah.
is, after all, something we are training, right? But how do we break from that bias, and how do we realize that people are equal? I'm also thinking of people with neurodivergent people, right? Not just
Yes, indeed.
LGBTQ,
Yeah.
right? There is a huge number of people who can really easily do some of the jobs that we have so-called able people are doing. But
Yeah.
it is today, the more we recognize and we accept and realize that there is a difference between one individual and the other, because it's a spectrum, but there's a lot of education missing, whether it's school or everywhere. Education, there's a lot of gaps in understanding LGBTQ. My Gen Z daughter taught me. I didn't know. I just
Yeah.
knew categories, but it was my daughter who explained to me the terms. She explained to me about choice, about preference in those areas, which I didn't understand. But I feel very happy that she has opened my eyes, right? That there are people like that, and we need to just accept that's the way it is, right? But again, that all comes to do with the fact that tolerance for different people, tolerance for people behaving differently, dressing differently, and accepting them, right? That acceptance and belonging we take a long time, because when you say bias, there's only so much you can train AI, but it's the most important thing is to change society at a grassroots level, and that I feel is all the influence, the shapers of the generation. That is what we need to look at.
Beautiful. I think thank you so much for sharing. That's such a lovely example about your daughter. And you're right. I think, you learn new things from our children every day, right?
Right.
All right. So as we come to sort of, the conclusion, I think as we talk, I think I had one quick thought, and then we'll come to the last question is, are we looking to eliminate bias, or are we looking to create new opportunities? Right? As I hear all of you talk, I think it's just struck me that, hey, are we looking at new opportunities? Are we eliminating bias? What do you think? What are we doing?
I think bias is always going to be there because it's a preference, right? Bias, the literal meaning of the word bias is it's slanted, right? It's just a slant. So I think there will always be preference from one thing to the other. And there is, even who's the right person for you, even when you are selecting a life partner, right? There is no hard and fast rule in that, right? Because it's preferential. Each person has their own thing. So therefore, I feel bias you can never eliminate. But we have to make sure the bias does not create a lack of belonging, does not exclude people. So it's more of inclusion that we need to think about rather than bias, is what I personally believe. That how do we include more and more people and look at, instead of eliminating people, how do we make allowances and say that, okay, let them be 80% okay, 20% we can manage. Or let them be 60% okay. Why do we want people, checking all the boxes? So I think a little bit of that allowance, tolerance, and inclusion should be there.
Love that. Takes me back to my, HR days where, the business head would want somebody equivalent to, body of a unicorn, but the brain of a giraffe. That, like such a person does not exist. Right. All right. Okay. So as we close, I'd like each of you to share one takeaway, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. What is the one key thing you want the audience to remember when it comes to AI's role in promoting DEI? Dilip, maybe we'd start with you. Right? One key thing you want the audience to remember.
Okay, I believe in this audience we have two set of audience probably. One would be from HR background, one from the let's say developer background, right? So
Yeah.
for the developer, I would say this discussion would really help you to understand this diversity, right? So always ensure when you're developing, bring the diverse perspective, right? If you are not a diverse team, at least bring the diverse perspective. Think that each organization, their diversity is kind of a key agenda for them. Okay, and if you bring a solution that will not only help the organization, but that's also a profitable business for you as a company, right? And if I say for the HR community, request is just to be a bit of patience, right? This is an opportunity for us, right? It's a beginning right now when we have to invest a lot. So like somebody was talking about, right, validation, right? Same thing in hiring also. Even though I'm bringing AI for the video interview or for the job description to remove all the bias, and then we also spend time in validating those and giving input to the AI, right? So just have some patience. Maybe with time, you will see a wonderful solutions when DI is helping AI and AI is helping DEI. So that's my takeaway. And I personally learned a lot from Mahua and Sachin particularly.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Who else wants to share? We've already got questions queuing up, but yes, who else wants to share?
I would just add to what I've already mentioned, Namita, saying that the idea is not to make ourselves bias-free, as Geeta also said, because as Sigmund Freud said, right, as long as humans exist, there will always be a subconscious and an unconscious bias, which is what makes us human, right? And I think we need to take immense amount of pride in that. But at the same time, if we can, make ourselves aware of the biases that we carry within ourselves, at least the conscious bias, right? And then make AI systems which can be brave enough to acknowledge that we can develop a system which can be more unbiased than us and can intervene in so many ways to be able to help us realize the true human potential. I think that is what we should be aiming for. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to get to the questions in chat. We have Sonali who's asking, are we sacrificing meaningful human interactions in DI by relying heavily on AI solutions? All right, thank you, Sonali. Who's going to take this one up?
So I would like to talk about this, Sonali, for
Yeah.
Sonali's benefit. So we're not sacrificing human interaction. So that is definitely not the purpose. Like I said, AI is more of a enabler, right? It is, whatever we do, whether it's automation, even the computerization we started in the 80s and the 90s, it was to assist us, right? Even the washing machines are there for assisting us. So all these human inventions are there to assist us. But it doesn't take away the fact that, you choose the clothes that you wear, right? The machine doesn't do that. So similarly, there will always be certain areas where you are going to interact with the human, whether it is in terms of building empathy or listening or understanding what they want or having conversations with them and solving their problems. So the most important thing I'm talking about is solving human problems is very diverse and very, very unique and very contextual, which we cannot expect AI to you can't just take one brush called AI and brush everything. So I don't think that works. That's how it works.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Sachin, were you going to say something?
No, I'm thinking Geeta perfectly addressed it. And yes, the idea is not to take away, introduce AI. See, when we develop AI systems, in our parlance, we always use this term calling that, we're not having AI replace humans, AI augment the human capability. Let's just use AI as much as we can to probably upgrade ourselves, augment our capabilities. So nothing to replace, etc. And which is going to be very difficult, but yes, let's just probably give it a try.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Folks, any more questions? Feel free to type out in the chat window if you have anything else, guys. All right. So thank you so much. I don't believe we have any more questions. Thank you all. You've been a fantastic panel. Thank you for being super interactive. Thank you, audience. You've been very, very patient and, very interactive. So thank you. Aparajita, Murli, if you would like to add anything.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Namita. Thanks, Sachin. So I was not able to come on a video because I was just somewhere on the hills. So
wow. There you
Sorry
can see
for that.
how AI is helping Murli achieve work-life balance.
Correct, correct.
It's just technology.
Thank you all. Thank you, Geeta. Dilip just left because he has to go.
Yeah.
Sachin, thank you. I know
Yeah.
you just traveled from US and joined us. Mahua, thank you very much for this. I think it's a great event. I mean, frankly, there are a lot of things the audience learned from this, and really enjoyed it a lot, guys. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
for the opportunity.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
all.
much.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you all.
everybody.
Thank you, Murli. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.